Welcome back, David. We're going to follow up on our, I don't even know what to call this, like a recovery cycle
Yeah,
topics, whatever, uh, and touch up on fertility. So, the myth about fertility, a lot of guys usually tell girls, well, I am on drugs, I can never get you pregnant. And then a lot of girls take drugs because they think, I never gonna have any issues with this. And so on and so forth. But there are many other things. How do you want to start? Do you want to start about like physiology of fertility, or do you want to start about the most common myth that you have heard that people kind of need to clear out that, you know what, it's not as simple as you have led to believe?
yeah. So number one, let's start with the myths first. Number one, sex hormones do have quite a bit to do with fertility, but they do not dictate fertility. And what I mean by that is if you're a male, right, and you're taking PEDs, that does not mean you're going to be infertile, right? There's a misconception there that if your body stops making testosterone because you're injecting testosterone, that does not automatically mean that you're not making viable sperm and able to get somebody pregnant. That's myth number one. That's by far the biggest myth every single guy mentions, especially younger guys. Oh, I want to have kids. I'm like, well, you should follow all the precautions to not have kids, assuming that you still are fertile, because it's not as simple as, oh, I've been taking testosterone for a year on testosterone replacement, or I'm a 20 something year old and I'm competing in bodybuilding, taking PEDs, and I'm not, there's no way I can get anybody pregnant. That is by far the biggest myth. That is not true. I have conceived two of the three of my kids while taking drugs, right? Like that just is not true.
What you bring up is, I know one of the guys I used to work with, and he has three kids, and every single one of them was when he was taking something.
Hmm.
And I asked him, I'm like, what? Because he was complaining. I'm like, why am I getting my wife pregnant again? I'm like, what do you mean? Do you have sex? You're gonna have her pregnant. Well, I thought you can't have her pregnant if you take something. I'm like, well, your last kids, did you take something? Yeah, common sense. Why did you think it's not gonna happen third time? And obviously,
Yeah.
Brandon Curry, Derek Lunsford, Seabum, Mr. Olympia, bloody title holders. They're
Mhm.
taking everything there is under the sun, and all had kids whilst
Yes.
prepping.
Yes. Now, in regards to men versus women, right? Same thing with women, right? Like just because you're taking drugs does not necessarily mean you're not going to get pregnant. In fact, most females, if their diet is if they're not too lean, they tend to still have their cycle even when they're competing and all of that, right? So number one, if you're a female and you're still having your cycle, you can definitely get pregnant, irrelevant of whether you're taking drugs or not. If you're a male, you're taking drugs, you're probably still fertile, right? I would say it's closer to like 60-40, right? 40% might not be fertile, right? And I say might because the only way you're going to verify it is by actually getting a test done on your sperm and so on, right? So that's myth number one. And that's the first myth. The second myth is that you have to come off of drugs to get pregnant, right? So let's hypothetically say, this is male centric right now. If you are not fertile, right, you've either verified that, or you're having unprotected sex and you're obviously not getting your wife pregnant or your girlfriend pregnant, then yeah, maybe you're not fertile. Does that mean you have to come off? That's the second myth. And the answer is, if you're a man, no. If you're a female and you're taking drugs and competing and very lean and you're not having a cycle, then obviously you're not going to be able to get pregnant. And that entails not necessarily coming off drugs, but it does entail restarting the ability to have your cycle, right? So that's the second most prevalent myth, is that you have to come off. It's not necessary for men, unless you want to, and that, for other reasons, right? Like we talked about in the previous video. Um, so that's kind of something that I wanted to get clear right off the bat. You have to establish fertility independent of your drug use and independent of your physique uh, composition, right? That's more specific to females.
So it's more sounds like you're talking about like calories needs to be matched towards expenditure. So don't be in deficit pretty much. That's how
Yeah,
it
don't
sounds
be in
like.
a deficit. For females, that has a lot more to do with like body fat percentage and circadian signaling. Women are way, way, way more sensitive to this because a cycle is a timing mechanism, right? There's a reason why it's 28 days, right? There's a reason different than the second half of the cycle.
You
That
broke
is
up
a
a little bit. What
time.
did you said there is a reason why.
Oh yeah, that there's a reason why the first part of the cycle for a female is different than the second part of the cycle. The reason for that is your body is doing different things. That is a timing mechanism. That is intertwined with uh, the circadian signaling of the body way, way, way deep in a female body. In a male body, it's not so much because you don't really have fluctuations in hormones from, the first half of the month to the second half of the month. That doesn't really work that way in men, but it does work that way in females. Females, um, let's talk about them first because it's a little bit more complicated as far as like establishing fertility again and stuff like that. And that has to do with establishing a cycle. And so think of it this way. How does your body know, or as a female, that it's been 16 days and that you need to ovulate, and then the second half of the cycle starts? It's timing. It has to do with your body knowing what one day is. That's where it starts, right? So that has to do with everything that we talk about of like getting sunlight in the morning and then absent of artificial light at night. That is what tells the body, hey, this is the start of the day, this is the end of the day. So think of it this way, right? If I told you, hey, in 16 days from now, you're going to do something different, right? Whatever that might be. Uh, you have to know how many days have gone by, right? If you don't know how many days have gone by, how are you going to be able to switch the mechanisms? And that is where most females, even females, I've seen females that don't take drugs and are just lean and they can't produce sex hormones, right? So sex hormones have a little bit to do with this as far as like the ability to cycle. So you need to get those on board. And that means that maybe you do need a replacement dose of hormones if you're very, very lean. And if you're not very lean and your sex hormones look fine, but you're not cycling correctly, meaning your cycle fluctuates, right? Some days, some months it's 34 days or 40 days, and some months it's only 20 days, right? So that tells me that your body is not capable of keeping track of days, right? So that is when things that are very rudimentary as far as like what we talk about come in major, major, major play. Um, Basically you have to reteach or retune the body on understanding exactly what a day is in your life, right? When does it start, when does it stop, and then after I would say 2 to 3 months of doing that appropriately, your body will catch on if your environment is good, to be able to tell how many days have gone by, and your cycle will start to regulate. So it has a lot more to do with circadian mechanisms in female bodies, um, as long as you're not too lean, right? So that's the first assessment. Are you making enough sex hormones? If the answer is yes. Are you too lean? If the answer is yes, then you need to bring up the body fat percentage. Somewhere around 20% body fat, most females should be uh, able to cycle correctly. That's not too lean, in my opinion. But if you're leaner than that, you may run into issues.
Yeah. So when you're talking through that, it's like the first telltale sign is if your cycle is irregular, you need to be cautious about your daily habits, right? That's what am I hearing it right?
Yes, 100%. If you're a female, this has way more to do with your daily habits than anything else as far as your cycle being irregular. So that's when a female comes to me and they're having hormonal problems, that's actually what I want to know. Is your cycle regular? If it's not regular or they don't actually know, because they have birth control on board, that's the other concept, right? There's birth control usually on board with drugs or competing and whatnot. And so that's where we start to establish, that there has to be some homework done. Hey, let's get some blood work. Let's see what your sex hormones look like. And more often than not, most contraceptives really crash your progesterone because most of them are progesterone based. And usually, let's say 50% of the time, it also crashes their testosterone.
Mm.
Right. And so then the obvious is, let's come off the birth control and see if you do have a regular cycle. If the cycle is irregular, then it comes down to, okay, let's start getting down the basics, right? Do you get sunlight in the morning? Do you get sunlight in the middle of the day? And do you make it dark at night? And most often than not, that's the last one there, making it dark at night is usually the problem. It's almost always the problem because the body actually thinks that that's another day if you turn on all the lights at night. It's basically noon again, and so your cycles tend to be shorter than normal.
And it's also seems like people who are getting involved into like fitness and health and whatnot, they also have this habit of staying up late, getting up early, and then going to the gym immediately instead of going outside. So it,
Yes,
it
yes.
feels it feels like a perfect storm of completely throwing out everything out of whack.
Yeah, yeah. I see that a lot with females because females, I mean, hell, they're just superheroes. I'm just telling you that right now. They have a job. They go to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning, right? Or earlier, right? Because they still got to go to work. And then they, have another job at the, a side hustle going on. And so they get home from their regular job and then they work into the evening on their computer or whatever. And so they tend to really disrupt their circadian signaling through those light mechanisms, the light interacting with their body. And that is almost always the problem with females is that they have completely disrupted the timing mechanisms in their body to know when to cycle certain hormones and when to bring them back down. And so that's the first place. And unfortunately, there there is no hormonal replacement for that, meaning because most women get told by their hormone doctor or whatever, oh, you take estrogen at the beginning, you take progesterone at the second half, and then you add in a little bit of testosterone. They try to synthetically manipulate this, and it just doesn't end up working. It never really does because it's exquisite timing, because it's not just about the hormones fluctuating, it's about ovulation and the egg being released correctly and all of that, and that is completely about timing mechanisms and has almost nothing to do with sex hormones themselves.
What about blood markers? So what can you test? What can you look out for men and women specifically to know that there is some kind of trouble brewing up?
Um, well, in women, there really won't be, other than what I said as far as is your cycle regular, because
Mm.
you can have perfectly static hormones and you've effectively stopped cycling, right? And that's actually what birth control does. It makes it static, progesterone heavy, and so you never actually go into the or into the follicular phase, right? That is what birth control does. So most of the time, when I said you go to a hormone specialist and they put you on estrogen at the beginning and progesterone at the end, they're making things static, right? And that effectively means there is no cycle, right? So that is actually the misconception. It's probably the biggest prevalent medical myth when it comes to females is, oh, we can just give them drugs and give it to them at a specific points, trying to simulate nature. And it doesn't work that way, because nature fluctuates in very incremental points. It's almost like each week is its own little micro cycle in a female, and that gets really tedious if you're trying to do that through manual means. And so the blood work that I like to see in females is, the obvious, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. Are you making them, right? And if the answer is yes, you're making them, then it comes down to, okay, are they cycling? And the only way you're going to be able to tell is, I like to track not a blood marker. It's called body temperature. right? Because your body temperature should go up by a degree or two in the middle when you're ovulating. And so I like to track that to see if you're even ovulating, because most females will be able to tell when they have their period, right, at the end of their cycle. But some may not be able to tell when they ovulate, right? And so that has to do with tracking your body temperature. That can be through an Aura ring or a Fitbit or anything that tracks your body temperature. And that's what we like to. That's what I like to track when we're going through that. So blood work actually is only really at the beginning, or if we have a question of whether you're making sex hormones. But if we determine that you are, then it becomes tracking body temperature and that sort of stuff. For men, it really just comes down to are you making your sex hormones? And the answer is, if you're injecting them, obviously you have the sex hormones there. And if you're not injecting them and your sex hormones are fine, and then it becomes get a test, get a fertility test, right? For men, it's really simple, to tell you the truth. Irrelevant of whether you're taking the sex hormones exogenously or making them yourself, if your test comes back that you're not fertile, then it's as simple as adding in one or two molecules. HCG would be like first line, and it's usually the most readily available, also the most affordable. And then HMG, that one's much more expensive. But if you combine those two, I can pretty much promise you within 8 weeks you're fertile, right? And you're going to be able to have, conceive a child. And that's usually about it, right? Like I don't really need to go any further than that. You just get a fertility test if you're a man, and if it comes back, hey, you're not fertile, but you do have sex hormones, whether that's exogenous or natural, then it becomes okay. I'm not fertile. Then I will go ahead and add in HCG and MCG or HMG. Sorry, and then that's it, right? You basically can start doing your daily duties or weekly duties, whatever you do there, and within 6 to 8 weeks, you're probably going to be fertile enough to conceive a child. It's not really that much more difficult than that
Is
for a
there any
man.
kind of problems that they can run into or anything like that that you're aware of?
Yeah, HCG can exaggerate estrogen production, especially if you're taking exogenous testosterone. It can make it so that you make a little bit more estrogen. So there may be an issue with nipple sensitivity. Almost never enough that you're going to get gynecomastia or anything like that. But you might get a little bit, depending on how the dose of the HCG, like how big it is, and depending for how long you've been using it. If it's short term, 8 weeks, and then you've gotten your wife pregnant or your girlfriend pregnant, you basically don't need to use it anymore, and that problem stops. That's really the only problem I see that can prop up, but it's very minor. I would say it's less than 25% of men experience that at the dosages needed to become fertile. Other things that are beneficial are making sure that your testicles are being exposed to infrared light as well, right? Whether that's sunlight or synthetic. Obviously, I would opt for the sunlight option if it's available at the time of the year that you're trying to do this and all of that type of thing. That does, how would I say, it charges up the ATP production of the sperm itself. So it doesn't have really a lot to do with like, are you fertile or not? It has more to do with the motility of the sperm. So in other words, you might be fertile, you have enough
So
sperm.
basically, do it outside.
Yeah, yeah, not joking. If that's possible, or have a tanning session and then follow that up with the deed, right? Um, that would be an appropriate thing to do. So yeah, that's really kind of how it goes. But for females, it is a lot more about you're going to be patient, and you're going to have to do your due diligence in terms of making sure that your lifestyle is on point to be able to have a uh, timing mechanism that knows how many days are going by, right? So by day 14 or 16, you should have a spike in your temperature and you should ovulate. Once we establish that you are having a spike in your temperature and you're ovulating, it's game on, right? At that point, it's just, hey, do the deed around that time, right? That's again the other concept that a lot of people don't understand is you're really only, as a female, you're really only capable of getting pregnant around that time, right? Like 4 or 5 days before ovulation, 4 or 5 days after ovulation. If you're having sex with your partner, but it's not around that time, the likelihood of getting pregnant goes down by a lot, right? So that's another concept for females to understand is, and it's not that they don't, that's actually talked about quite readily. Most
Yeah, a lot don't know.
yeah, some a lot don't, but if you're even remotely into like the fertility space for females, that is something that gets talked about a lot. And if
Mm.
you haven't heard that, then you're hearing it now, right? Which is, hey, if you're not having sex around that time, the likelihood of getting pregnant diminishes greatly.
So you covered habits, you covered what kind of hormones need to be in check and all this kind of stuff. Is there anything that can enhance recovery for this, for let's somebody who's been on doing stuff for like 10 years or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
they're cautious about this. Is there some kind of like nutritional strategy or training approach or anything like that that they should take into account, like less
Uh,
stress or what's happening there?
yes, yes. So for females, stress and the amount of fats in the diet play a huge role in the ability to get pregnant. Because
Mm.
remember, when a female gets pregnant, they're, as of right now, they're the only ones that can, but who knows what happens in the future. Right. So I'm just saying, right, that things are getting really weird out there. But when women get pregnant, they need to actually establish a really good how would I say, cohesiveness with how much energy is coming into the body and how much energy is on their body. This
Mm.
has to do with leptin sensitivity and leptin signaling, because you're about ready to build another human inside your body. That human being is going to require new cells, DHA. DHA plays the biggest role. This goes back to seafood and getting enough omega-3 fatty acids into the body, because as a female, you have to build a human brain inside your body. The human
Mm.
brain is going to require an incredible amount of omega 3s. Omega 3s are essential fatty acids. You cannot make them, you have to consume them, which also means the child cannot make them. They have to get it from you. This actually has a lot to do with what most women call mom brain, right? Which means they tend to have a lot more brain fog. They tend to have a lot more. I don't want to sound demeaning, but they tend to be a little bit more spacey while they're pregnant, spacey after they've been pregnant. And the reason for that is the child is actively taking your omega 3s. You are funneling your omega 3s, whether they're already in your body or you're consuming them through food, to the child to form all of its brain cells, all its other cells. So fat content in the diet matters, and the type of fat matters for a female incredibly a lot, way more than you could ever imagine, because you have to build all the cells in that other human's body, right?
So
And
even if
so
your body fat and everything else is in check, would be good to kind of acknowledge that quality of food matters if they
a
are
lot.
because like a lot of women specifically now, even if they try to get for a child, they still overdo how much body fat they carry, and specifically in the competitive environment.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes, yes, yes. So they're usually too lean to actually build another human
mm,
body. Right? And so the first thing that I like to do once we establish that you're cycling correctly is, okay, now let's start building up your body fat reserves. That doesn't mean get fat. It means you want to have enough fat coming in through the diet, and you want to have enough omega 3s coming in through the diet, that if you were to get pregnant, you're not going to get a miscarriage or something like that, right? Because
mm,
getting for a female, getting pregnant is the start of the journey, right? The man's kind of done at that point, right? If he got you pregnant, his job is done. Your job's just starting, right? And so now you have to make sure that you have enough fat coming into the diet, that you're going to form cells correctly and form brains correctly, and you have to have enough omega 3s coming into the diet so that you suffer less, right? This is probably the biggest thing that I can say to any female that's trying to get pregnant or is pregnant: make sure that your omega-3 and your fat content in your diet is closer to the average female, right? So I'm talking for a female that's, between 100 pounds, right? That's a very small female, all the way up to around 170 pounds. You need to have somewhere close to 70 to 80 grams of fat coming into the diet,
Mm.
right? Those fat sources should be whole food sources, and they should not be terribly plant-based, right? It doesn't mean that you can't have plant fats. It means that 50% of it should at least be coming from animal sources. And then of that 50%, I would say you're going to need at least 5 to 6 grams a day coming in through omega-3 sources.
So
And
essentially end up with supplements because quality of omega-3s in food is incredibly low at the moment.
yeah, yeah, it is, right. Like if you're especially if you're doing that from animal or from land-based animals, right? Grass-fed beef has omega-3s in it, but it's incredibly little, right? Like it's just not enough. And so you end up with two options. And if you're pregnant, I would say execute on both, which is supplement with omega-3s and consume enough uh, fatty fish or seafood that you're supplementing not just the omega-3s, but all of the cofactors that tell the body what to do with the omega-3s. That's going to be things like copper, zinc, selenium, everything that's already packaged in the whole food source, right? And honestly, I've had quite a few females, I would say probably a dozen or so, that have come to me, and some with minor problems, right? They're already cycling, but they just miscarriage quite a bit. Others, they aren't cycling, and we have to kind of start from scratch. But at the end of the day, it almost always comes back to, once the lifestyle gets fixed, cycling starts to happen normally. Once cycling starts to happen normally, can we bring enough fat into the diet and omega-3s into the diet that when you do get pregnant, you suffer less from brain fog, you suffer less from fatigue and things of that nature, and you're building the baby healthily.
What about men? So you you touched it through women and whatnot. What about men? Should they abstain from something? Should they prepare themselves somehow through nutrition or training or
Yeah. So through nutrition, for the most part, men have it the easiest, right? There, as long as they have now, men and women still suffer from the same thing. If you're too lean, you're too lean, right? You're that actually will make it so that sex hormones and sperm viability will be low. So getting to a healthy body fat percentage, meaning non-competitive, right? So for a man, that's somewhere around 10%, right? You're going to have abs still. You're going to be lean. You're going to be fitter than 98% of the people on the planet, but you're still going to look good, right? But it's not going to be 8%, 7%, right? Like that's most likely too lean unless you go the pure drug route, right? I'm going to take exogenous hormones and I'm going to add in HCG and MCG. Then at that point, it really doesn't matter how lean you are. You're going to get them pregnant. Now, having said that, do you make a better baby if you're a little bit more body fat and are going through proper lifestyle habits to ensure that the motility of your sperm is not defective, the quality of your sperm, right? That they can swim well and that they are non-defective? Yes, the answer is yes. Now, the things that most men need to abstain from there have nothing to do with nutrition, it has to do with this thing right here. Okay. Don't carry it in and around your genitals. That means your back pocket, your front pocket. Don't have it there. That ruins your sperm's ability to swim. That ruins your sperm's morphology. You'll make defective babies some way or another when you are being irradiated there. So by far, if you're a man, right, like I mentioned, getting them pregnant is not hard. Making sure that your sperm is the best quality sperm, that is hard because that has to do with lifestyle things, right? And the lifestyle things for a man go orders of magnitude higher in terms of just get sunlight, right? It goes, hey, what kind of electromagnetic fields are interacting with your testicles, right? This is the problem for most men,
Mm.
without a doubt. Because men just, they have pockets, they don't carry things with them. They tend to shove everything in their pockets. The phone's almost always, I would say, if I had to guess, I would say a phone is near a man's testicles for 4 to 5 hours a day, easily.
Yeah, that's minimum. And then you get someone who's sitting on a laptop on a sofa in the evening and so all stacks up, right?
Yeah. And so things can be now. That doesn't mean don't carry your cell phone with you. There's fanny packs, right, that are shielded. That means that once you put it in the fanny pack, the phone has no reception. It actually can't receive phone calls or anything like that. Like, it's annoying, but you still have your phone with you. But it's also not irradiating your body. For laptops, they sell pads, right, like that you can put on your lap, or blankets that are also shielding so that you don't irradiate yourself. So again, it comes down to your lifestyle. Are you somebody who requires these objects to work, right? That's how you make your income. So I by no illusion am I saying, oh, you're not going to be able to do any of that. It means now you have to think out of the box a little bit on how you're going to shield your testicles from being irradiated, right? So you can make better quality sperm. So making and signaling for good quality sperm is the same lifestyle stuff for a female. Making sure you get sunlight on yourself, making sure that you keep it dark at night, making sure that you sun your genitals and stuff like that. But then you have to go a step further. How do you keep it from you made good quality sperm? How do you not damage them? And that has to do with electromagnetic fields in and around your genital area. For females, it also goes that way, but females, it's not quite that big of a problem because they always have a purse. They always have something. The phone and their laptop is usually not right on their body. It's usually in their purse, and that is one thing that I would encourage more men to do. Hey, have a purse, right? Have a man purse, have a fanny pack where you carry your electronics in. Uh, they could learn a thing or two about women when it comes to that type of thing.
So what other things are, because we know a lot of people who are getting involved in PEDs and whatnot, and they usually get involved with recreational drugs and many other things. So how damaging is that for their ability to conceive?
Recreational drugs, for example, marijuana will make by itself has been shown to make you not as fertile. The reason for that is marijuana has a deep connection with the inner mitochondrial membrane for autophagy and apoptosis. In other words, it signals for killing of cells. You make yourself more sensitive when you consume a lot of marijuana, and a lot, I just mean daily use, right? Like, if you smoked a whole lot once a week, you know, if you have sex regularly, the damaged sperm kind of gets recycled, right? But if you're doing it daily, yes, you're going to exaggerate how much non-viable sperm you have compared to viable sperm with that particular drug. That particular drug does do that. Other drugs, right? We could get into stimulants and things of that nature, cocaine, etc. Those are all going to influence lifestyle factors to make you not viable, meaning most recreational drugs are done in the middle of the night in nightclubs, etc., or partying, etc. So the lifestyle involved with recreational drugs is what sets you up for non-viable sperm, not necessarily the drug. That doesn't mean the drug doesn't damage you, right? It can damage brain cells, dopamine reception, and all that type of thing. But it probably will have minimal effect on your sperm itself. But the lifestyle that you interact with is what's going to cause the most damage to your sperm. Because think about what getting pregnant is. It's the viability of your environment conducive for procreation. That is what having an offspring is. Hey, if you were to kind of take this whole conversation and dismantle it down, this is what it's telling you. When a female and a man are in the correct environment, that's procreation. It means the environment is good for reproducing another human being. If the environment is bad, then nature has worked it out. If the environment is bad, you shouldn't be procreating because the environment is not conducive to move on to the next generation. right? That is the blanket statement of what it means to have a child. Your environment, financial, emotional, uh, pollutants, all of that type of stuff is signaling don't have a child. The environment is not conducive for that child to survive correctly. So you become infertile, right?
It brings it back to the biggest myth is that what I usually hear is that girls come to me and like, oh, my boyfriend said he can't get me pregnant. And I'm like, he either is completely retarded, for the lack of better words, or does it on purpose. So, but
Yeah.
more often than not, it's just negligence
Yeah.
because
It's just that,
you
you know,
hear
he
this a
heard it.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he heard it from somebody or his friend at the gym or whatever, and so he's just repeating nonsense, right? And that's why we wanted to start the episode of the only way you're as a man, right? The only way you're going to be able to tell if you're fertile or not is a fertility test.
mhm,
Now, luckily enough, those are easy, right? That I think in America, I think that costs you like $20, and you can just go to the any
right.
doctor and literally go to the hospital and they'll examine your sperm and tell you within a day of yeah you're fertile or not, right? And that's actually when you do it that way, you're actually not just looking at how much sperm you're making. They're looking at the motility, they're looking at how well they swim and all of that, right? Now you can in America you can order a home kit that just tells you whether you're making enough or not, right? That doesn't tell you the details, but if you're making enough, right, a home kit's a good place to start for a man. Hey, if I'm making enough to get somebody pregnant, I should assume that I'm fertile.
Mm. Yeah, yep. Yeah, I think it's good just to kind of touch up on this because this one just doesn't want to die. It's just sticking around like there's
Yeah, yeah. And most often than not, here's the other thing, right? What I mentioned just moments before, the environment actually dictates fertility. There are, right? I'm not downplaying the infertility pandemic. That is actually a real pandemic on the planet right now. More and more people are not fertile. It has nothing to do with their drug use. It has almost everything to do with their environment and their lifestyle, because that is what actually determines the procreation capabilities of a species. Is the environment conducive for the next generation? That is what your body is trying to figure out.
mm,
If you become infertile, because the thing that I'm seeing is that more people not taking drugs are not fertile anymore.
yep. Yep, we see that a lot. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's probably will be more and more opportunity for you to shine and help those kind of people because I know like Alex Kiko, he counts like thousands.
Yeah, yeah, and
It's a,
and like I said, most of the people that he deals with are men, and that's very easy, right? Like you can literally get somebody pregnant with just some drugs, but going beyond that and ensuring that your everything is really, really, really good and conducive to have a really exceptional child, right? Has to do more with lifestyle, has to do with not irradiating your testicles and that sort of stuff from a man's perspective. From a female's perspective, it comes back to the details of your life and the details of whether your body can tell time correctly or not.
yeah, so moral of the story is if you take PEDs, don't assume that you're suddenly able to sleep around like there's no tomorrow and there will be no consequences. Never mind STDs and all that kind of stuff, but you might end up with something that you'll have to look after for next 18, 20 years.
Correct. Correct.
Awesome, David. Appreciate your time. I'll see you next week in follow-up videos and thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you.